What's up, guys? Ben here, bringing you another video today. It is time for our tier list. It's way too early to be doing this, but I don't care. Y'all have asked for it. Let's do our way too early tier list for the upcoming CDL regular season. If you are new here, I don't do like the letter thing because I think it's kind of whack, and it takes a lot of, I think, like this sort of nuance and sort of almost on both sides, like the nuance and ambiguity of sort of how these tier lists happen. Just the fact that, you know, with the unbalanced regular season schedule and a whole bunch of other factors, like there's a lot of sort of fluidity in this. So I tried to simplify it with this structure so it's like pretty clear how I rank stuff. So let me explain it to you. Sunday regulars at the top. These are going to be your top 3 or 4 teams. And by Sunday regulars, I mean teams that I expect will make it to Sunday of like most tournaments, every tournament. So again, top 3, top 4 is what you get on Sunday. So that is the thought process there. Potential contenders is going to fluctuate throughout the season. This is usually like 5 through 8, 5 through 6 teams that I think have an ability to win. They may have one thing they need to work on, a minor thing, but for the most part, they pull up and kind of play their game on a sort of an A level. I think they're probably going to have a chance to win the event. Work to do are usually like solid to kind of teams. It's usually going to be people that are on the cut line of making champs or right below that. And I think they have like 1 or 2 real clear issues or personnel issues that just aren't going to help them with their ability to win. They might still have the ceiling to sort of make it to top 4 or top 6, but they have some clear issues they need to work on. And missing pieces are teams I think are at the bottom and are basically, you know, a personnel move away or 2 from really being a solid or contending team. So let's begin. We're going to start with Atlanta FaZe. Coming off a pretty solid season last season. Obviously, they didn't win champs, so that's kind of a bust for them. They made a roster change. Out goes Slasher. In comes Draza into their squad. There's no other reason to, I can think of to not put them in Sunday regulars. This team has been consistently top 3, top 2, top 1, whatever you want to debate there, but they make it to pretty much every Sunday on the books. They're going to be there or thereabouts. Yes, they're not going to win every event. And I think as we sort of develop this sort of top 4 here, you're going to see my thought process that it's a pretty stacked top of the pyramid as far as the league goes, but these guys are going to be contenders all season, and they've looked good in the scrims I've seen so far, which is not that much of a surprise. All right, next up we have the Boston Breach. I'm going to put them in potential contenders. I think this is sort of an easy placement, and let me explain why. So they've actually made a number of changes following last season. As you probably remember, you know, Boston were solid online last year. They went to LAN, and they had a couple of good events, but outside of that, they were very mid at LAN. And they made a lot of roster changes throughout the year, a lot of sub players in and out. Zinni retired, obviously, that didn't really help. And so they've kind of like squad wiped outside of Snoopy their entire lineup. They brought in Priester from New York, Austin, aka Slasher from Atlanta FaZe, and they have brought back Capsule, who was on their squad back in their initial season in Vanguard. So a lot of changes in Boston. I actually kind of like the thought process here with Priester and Slasher. You get a lot of veteran presence, 2 players that won events last season, and you have these young gun players in Snoopy and Capsule that still need to develop. I think they're both talented, but they definitely have shortcomings. You watch Snoopy's stream, I think his communication is very weak, and Capsule does go rogue on the map at times. So they've got to figure out how to work on both those issues. But if they do, I think their ceiling is winning events. I think at worst, their floor with this team is going to be like consistently top 6. It's just a question of can they, you know, really beat these top, you know, kind of 3 or 4 teams on a consistent basis to really crack into that area. I don't really think so, but I think there are going to be a couple events where Boston teams like making it to losers finals, and then they have a real chance to make it to grand finals. So we'll see. Potential contenders feels like a good spot for them. I think everybody kind of agrees opening the season, this team will probably be there or thereabouts in the top 6. All right. So if you have not paid attention to Call of Duty League over the summer, you're going to see this Ravens logo. You're like, oh, London Royal Ravens. And I'm going to tell you, they're not in London anymore. They're in Carolina. And you're going to be like, what are the Royal Ravens doing in Carolina? Why didn't they rebrand the team? Bro, I don't know. Either way, they've got a pretty interesting squad this season. Basically, completely new look lineup. Brian Sink comes over after his tenure at Minnesota RØKKR as for a GM coach. So he's going to be running the squad as well. Fan favorite Clayster will lead the line here at the AR position, as well as GodRx, who is finally getting a shot again after being in the RØKKR team over in Modern Warfare 2019. GodRx has been sort of running challengers to an extent for the last couple of years, has been that champ this season. So are defending his amateur title championship, which I guess he's not really going to defend because he's in the Pro League now. But anyway, he won amateur champs last year. And then at the sub position situation, you've got Gwyn, who was on Seattle's sub spot last year, and they never really called him up, which didn't really agree with that, but sure, whatever. And then Real, who was involved with RØKKR. You're seeing a theme here with the Minnesota RØKKR. And then I believe had to go back for some visa issues last year, and that's why he didn't really feature for RØKKR Academy during the season, but he's got a lot of potential in him as well. So yeah, there's kind of a little bit of like an extent of like Brian Saint and friends kind of going on there. Maybe their team might get upset with my characterization of it, but let's be honest here, like Brian's been friends with Clay for a long time. He obviously coached GodRx on RØKKR, same with Real, so I don't think that's an unfair characterization. But I do actually really like this lineup. I think it makes sense from a composition wise. I do have some concerns though. The GodRx Clayster AR combo, really curious to see how this works in practice. Now, if you get the Clay, who is sort of a top to above average sort of replacement level player, this AR lineup's going to be nasty. But if they get the Clay that we've seen the last couple of seasons who really struggles at the beginning of the year, I think this AR lineup is going to be a little bit weaker than some of the other top teams in the league. The sub dude is also a little bit kind of an unknown here with Gwen Real. I think they could definitely shoot back, but decision-making chemistry, I'm not really sure what to think of this team. So I have a tough spot of like really putting where to put this team because I legit like don't know where to put them. I'm going to put them in work to do right now. Let's see how this fills out. I actually really think that Carolina might like force their way into sort of the top 6 conversation in this first split. I haven't really looked at their schedule yet. I haven't really done my sort of preseason review videos, and those will be in a couple of weeks, but I think they're kind of borderline just because I expect them to sort of be prepared for the start of the season. I think as the season goes on though, we'll see if this talent can stack up with some of the other rosters. All right, this one's easy. Los Angeles Guerrillas, man, it's been a mess in LAG land, especially the last couple of days. I'm recording this video on Thursday morning, and they finally have a lineup in place after spending the whole season really having nobody and being the last team to form. So their lineup's going to be Assault and Diamond Con as the ARs, and then Fame and Estriel will run their subs, although right now it is sort of like a 3 to 4-ish AR meta, so pick at the AR sub split what you will at the current time with the game meta. It's a funky lineup, man. My guess is this lineup came together because there's like some chemistry with the coach DOs that's come in now to that spot. So they're kind of trying to put together sort of ex-teammates and all that. But talent-wise, there's just a lot of unknowns here. Adam Assault's getting his 3rd run on LAG, and to be honest, it didn't work the other 2 times. I really like Connor, aka Diamond Con. I think he got kind of screwed last year when LAG Academy got brought up and he didn't because of visa issues and them not wanting to bench Alex. So that is unfortunate. So I'm glad that Connor is getting a shot. I like Fame. I actually think he got a raw deal on RØKKR, so deserved spot there. Estriel's an unknown here. So to be honest, this LAG team, I just don't think they have the talent to stack up with other squads. And so I'm going to put them in missing pieces. And I don't even know what mechanism this team will have to actually make changes this season, because LAG's sort of doing a whole like very skeleton crew type thing. So fortunately for these guys, someone's got to be 12th to 11th in this league. And then I think it might be these boys. All right, LA Thieves. So this is a fun one, man. Big changes in the LA Thieves camp in the off season. Pretty much squad wipe. We'll see you later. Octane obviously retired, now hanging out with us on the watch parties and on the flank. Draza went off to Atlanta FaZe. Kenny is now a member of OpTic Texas. We'll talk about that in a minute. And Envoy is also left and now has joined the Toronto Ultra, and we'll talk about them last. So all of the sort of core of that championship winning team in Vanguard is now gone, and they're starting fresh. So they have brought over Cammy and Afro from the Minnesota RØKKR, Dan Ghosty from the OpTic situation, the OpTic Texas situation last year. And then Joe Deceives coming over from LA Guerrillas. So I actually really like this Thieves lineup, and I like the thought process here. They weren't going to be able to build some insano dynasty level team in this offseason. You know, Nate Shaw's made some comments that they're also not going to pay some exorbitant salaries like some of the other teams in the league are doing. So I think the sort of play here is to find 1 or 2 pieces that are going to be mainstays on this lineup going forward, a la what you see with like Toronto and Atlanta FaZe. And I think they may have found some here. I really like Joe Deceives. And listen, I might be a little bit biased. He comes to my stream a lot, but I like the potential there. And I don't think he really had an opportunity to develop last season because of how horrible that LAG situation was last year. The question is, between Afro and Cammy, can they bring back sort of the best that those players kind of gave during the Modern Warfare 2019, Vanguard, Cold Warriors, et cetera, et cetera. We'll see, because last year, both those players had kind of mixed seasons. Dan Ghosty had a really good start on OpTic Texas, and I'm curious to see if he can continue to form on this team holding down an AR. So I like this Thieves team. They're going to be very prepared to be the season. And just like Boston, I expect this team to be contending early in that top 6 spot. I don't know if they're good enough. Again, Same in Boston. I don't know if they're good enough to consistently beat the sort of Atlanta FaZes, OpTic Texas, Toronto's, New Yorks of the world. And we'll get to like those teams in a minute when I explain sort of my top 4. But Thieves kind of in the potential contenders category, I think is a no doubter. And I think this team will be at champs this season for sure. By the way, as I continue this video, just note like the order of how I put teams in these tiers doesn't matter. So when this gets posted on Reddit and I get roasted for putting some team above another team, like please go in the comments and say that I said that it's not in any real order. I'm just lobbing in there for fun, you know. The Miami Heretics. So this is a real fun one for me because I really like the Heretics organization. They haven't been around in Call of Duty and been a mainstay as far as the pro scene since like Black Ops 4. When franchising came around, they got kind of screwed, even though I believe they were in early conversations to get one of the franchise spots. And now they have finally gotten in. They're in sort of it seems like a share agreement or some kind of commercial relationship with the Florida Mutineers Misfits organization. So their lineup this season to start the year is going to be Eric, Boom, Lucky, Metals, and Vickle, with Method Sick, who you might remember from the Black Ops 4 years, as their one of their coaches. So I actually really like this lineup for a fully Spanish-speaking team. I think a lot of people are going to be behind them and supporting them. I think a number of these players had really good challenger seasons last year in Europe. Vickle was obviously up and down, but he played really good at the end of the season. And we were talking about this on the Flink last night, that if this Florida team last year had made champs, it would have been pretty solid. So what do I think then? I think talent-wise, potentially this team could be really good. I think ceiling-wise, there's a lot of opportunity for this team to really crack kind of the top 4, top 6. The floor is that they come here, they can't really impose a sort of really solid teamwork they have, and they sort of sit somewhere around, bottom of champs qualification to like the 10th spot. So I don't think they need an obvious roster change, but I don't know if like they're better than say the Boston or LA Thieves. So just like Carolina, I don't really know where to put them. I'm going to put them in work to do for now, but let me see how this kind of shakes out, and then I can decide if I'm going to move anybody up or down here. But like, I think they're solid. It's just I can't put everybody. I can't like make this 8 teams, you know what I mean, at the top, and then so I just got to figure out how we're going to do it once we fill the rest of this out. Next up, the Minnesota RØKKR. A lot of changes after a very disappointing last season. I think in general, just a disappointing 4 years so far for Minnesota RØKKR. Like, I'm going to be straight up with you. Straight up. This is maybe harsh if you're a RØKKR fan. I really don't care. Outside of like 2 or 3 weekends the last 4 years, RØKKR have always sort of disappointed me as a franchise. Yes, they had that great event win in Cold War, and they played really good at the end of that season. And they did play really solid at the beginning of the year in Modern Warfare 2019, but the last 2 years have been terrible. And I think that for the amount of money this RØKKR franchise has spent on their team, they have gotten 0 return. So this is a really critical year, I think, for this organization. There's a lot of talks about some merger with G2 coming. So a lot of uncertainty here, and maybe some changes again if this team doesn't perform this year. So they have a very interesting lineup this year. Lamar, aka Accuracy, is coming in over from Seattle Surge. Big Wake will be joining them from Boston, and Linz and Vivid rounding out the rest of their sub spots. So Reese coming over from Boston, and Linz was seen with the Boozer last year in EU Challengers. So interesting lineup. Lamar and Big Wake AR duo is very interesting to me. We know what Lamar is going to bring. He's not going to be some elite slayer, but he's going to get his boys organized. They're going to play tight discipline setups. Can he bring out the best in a Big Wake player who I think is immensely talented, but is clearly not developed on the issues that I think is holding him back from being like an elite level talent in the CDL. He is very good. He shoots very straight, but he's got to work on being more impactful on the map. That was a huge issue in Boston last year. I like Reese Vivid. He's a great SMG player, but as you saw in Boston last year, he can toss games by being sometimes a little bit too aggressive. And look, yeah, there are other elite subs like, say, Abizi that play just as aggressive. But the problem is, like, if you're going to play that way, you got to be like Abizi and win those crazy gunfights. And sometimes Reese does not do that. So that's going to be something. And then Lind is kind of an unknown on this team. I don't know much about him as a person. But listen, Lamar has made a history of taking kind of raw players and sort of developing them. So this RØKKR team could be real interesting. My thing and where I want to put them is I'm going to put them like here-ish. I actually not going to move them yet up to potential contenders, but I wouldn't be surprised if this team gets top 6 at the first event. I'm just a little bit concerned that for as much work as Lamar can do, with Looney now the head coach of the team, with Brian obviously moving on to Carolina, I just think that too many squads are ahead of them that I think have a little bit more talent, might be a little bit better in S&D. So when we get to game 5s, I just see here comes RØKKR, but I'm I'm looking, maybe this team might take a step up and surprise. We'll see, but they're going to be fighting for a champ spot all season. I don't think they're a terrible team. There's just so many squads that are like on the edge of top 8. I don't really know how to rank all of them just yet. Here's a team I do know how to rank, the New York Subliners. We're going to move them to Sunday regulars. They are your defending champions and should be around the top spot because of that. They've actually made one change from their game winning roster last season. They've actually surprisingly dropped Priesta and brought in Sib from Seattle. So talent wise, that move I think makes sense. Chemistry wise and what it does to their S&D game to me is a big question mark. And I'm a little concerned that if their S&D game is not as good as last year, they're going to kind of falter back to the pack of the rest of the team. So I'll talk about it more in my sort of preseason review video on that front, but I expect New York to be a contender this season. I just don't see them winning 3 events again. I think that was obviously a fantastic season on their part. I just think they might have to do a lot of work here in the beginning of the season to figure it out with Dante, but I expect them to be contending and kind of in the mix here most of the season for at least an event win. All right, next up we got the Paris. Sorry, I keep doing the Vegas Legion, bro. They haven't been Paris for a while. I'm gonna be honest. I gotta put this team sort of here at the bottom. They've got an interesting, completely newish lineup. Again, this season is sort of a theme here. The only kind of holdover from last season is Standy, who came over mid-season from Toronto. They have brought over Purge, Nero from Boston, and Attach from RØKKR. Listen, it's not a terrible lineup. It makes sense role-wise. There's definitely some decent gunny on this team, probably some of the best gunny Vegas has ever had. The problem is I just don't really see how this team is going to progress as quickly as some other squads. Like, I'm confused where the leadership's really going to come from. Here, I love Dylan. Dylan's my boy, but like Dylan's never been the type of leader, so he's going to maybe have to develop that quality on the squad. But I think Purge might surprise a lot of people this season. But again, it's a crowded situation. And the Nero Standy sub duo, I'm a little, I'm not super high on. It sounds great on paper, may not play well in practice. And I have a feeling, again, that this team is probably going to be somewhere around 9 through 11. There's obviously some ambiguity of how everybody below top 8 will be, but I kind of put Vegas behind everybody in work to do right now, and therefore I'm going to put them in missing pieces. All right, Seattle Surge. So this is a team that I have no idea where to place in this lineup. And let me explain to you why, because it's super confusing to me. So they have completely squad wiped their whole situation, coach and all, and they brought over Rambo Ray, who was originally attached to OpTic Texas at the beginning of last season. He was then kind of let go. I don't know. It's a weird situation. Ray hasn't talked about it. And their lineup is as follows, and it's a weird lineup. They've got RCs coming over from LAG. They've got Hook coming over from OpTic. They have Illy coming over from, I guess, OpTic, although maybe he got dropped mid-season. I don't know. Again, everything around OpTic and roster changes last year. Ambiguity. And then Abuza came over, highly touted prospect from Challengers last season. So ARs, you basically have RCs and Illy as your ARs. Now, there are kind of like 3 ARs in the game right now. So the weird part about that is Abuza also kind of played AR well for Challengers last season. So I don't know, this combination of the 3 ARs, I feel like one of them may end up being the odd man out at some point mid-season on this roster. And look, I like Hook. He's obviously very talented, a world champ. But I have talked ad nauseum on this platform and on my stream about what I think of Kyler's strengths and weaknesses. And I don't think that he's made a lot of inroads on his weaknesses. So this team has to be good in S&D, and honestly, so far in S&D tournaments, they've been So I don't really know what to think. I want to put them in potential contenders, but I just think they're stuck just in this pack of infinite teams in this sort of work to do category that are all on the edge of like top 8, top 6. So I think they're just stuck in the mess, and like, yeah, this team could click and they can be really good, but they can also not click and be horrendous. I really just don't know what to think of Seattle, and that's what's ranking them as really, really hard. All right, next up we have OpTic Texas. So they're going to be in Sunday regulars. Let me go off the bat and kind of give sort of a top end on my sort of thing I'm looking for OpTic Texas this season. This is my personal, if I were them, this would be my goal this season. They have been, as an organization, a complete and utter non-factor at champs for essentially the entire tenure of the CDL. I mean that with all sincerity. Like, they, you know, I'm not counting Empire in the situation. I don't count that as OpTic, even though I know Shotzi was on that team. They just haven't been in that top 3 or top 2 conversation at the end of the season, and really like haven't made a champs grand final since IW is crazy to me, considering the amount of money that gets spent on these rosters, the talent. Like, they just can never put it together at the end of the season. So for me, regardless of what you think of the regular season, like, that needs to be the goal for this OpTic Texas team. Make it deep in this tournament, try and make the grand final. of champs this season, at least make losers finals. And that's something to build on for next year if you're not going to win. They haven't been able to do that. So they made two big changes this season. They finally get Pred from Seattle. He signed as a free agent to this roster after the sort of, well, they won't they, it's sort of the January transfer window drama last year. There's no transfer windows in CDL. I don't know why I said that. And then they obviously brought over Kenny from LA Thieves. And I really like the Ken pickup because for me, someone's got to start setting some culture here with this OpTic Texas team that candidly have had this sort of issue around them with just not always progressing in a meaningful way as a team. Now, I don't think they really had that issue as much last season. Once they brought in Dan Ghosty, I felt like they were doing a good job of progressing. And then I don't know what really happened at the end of the season there. They just had a complete meltdown after Major 4. I don't know what happened there, but when they got to Toronto. But this lineup should be amazing this season. They should be good in all game modes. The biggest thing I think for this lineup they need to figure out is Pred and Shotzzy and their chemistry on the map together, because their play styles are very different from each other. And I don't know if they'll mesh well. Pred is very deliberate, loves to lie prone and kind of play off of information and kind of bait his teammates. And Ant is a very flashy player who I think may need to simplify a little bit. So I kind of talked to Shotzzy a lot when I was at COD Next, and I think he's aware that, you know, they have a lot of work to do on this front, and it's top of mind for him. I think they'll figure it out. I feel good value for them to win an event this season. And again, I think they have it in them to be a factor at champs. So I'm putting them in Sunday regulars. And the last team that I am putting in this category, and again, Sunday regulars, like this whole thing, I mean, just to make people less annoyed, I'm just going to do it sort of this way. I'm going to go ahead and put Toronto in Sunday regulars. They're our last team here on the list. They are your champs runners up last year. Got absolutely Kentucky fried. They played so good on Saturday at champs and then laid an absolute egg on Sunday. And, you know, they made a decently solid change this year. Charlie Hicks, who they said goodbye to, and they brought in Envoy. It was looking a little bit sketchy in the offseason for Toronto. You know, we were just kind of watching scrims 2 days ago, me and Tommy sort of in TeamSpeak, and Scrappy came in and kind of talked a little bit about, I asked him a question, he talked a little bit about sort of what it was like in the beginning of the offseason when management was sort of making unilateral changes to the lineup without kind of consulting him, and he felt like a kind of way. And then they kind of decided to sort of keep the core and bring in Envoy. So I thought that was a good decision. This team should only get better from last year, because I think Envoy comes in, they can give them what he did as far as teamwork and the gap fill and all of that, but he's going to be a little bit more of a skilled player in terms of winning his ones. So this team's still going to be phenomenal in search. They're going to be great all game modes. They were a great control team last season. They're deep, and I think they're going to continue to be a contender and kind of mix well with sort of the matchups here in the top 4. All right, so looking at the list here, do I move anyone up to work to do? I don't think so. I'm going to actually leave this to me as is. I feel like the top 6 to me is sort of my preference on a top 6, but in the top 4, I think is locked. You can try and argue in the comments, but I feel like this is a lock to me. Let me know in the comments what you think of these teams, because I can be convinced to move one up, but I feel like Boston and Thieves have more about them to sort of stand out from the pack of 6. And then these two teams at the bottom, I think to me are pretty clear, but I can see like RØKKR not really clicking and sliding down there, Seattle, you know what I mean? So there's a lot of flexibility, I think, in the bottom 6 here outside of LAG to really slide up and down on this list. But I think it's a good start. And as always, we'll keep doing a tier list every week once the season starts. I'll probably do another one before the season starts based on the scrims, so we'll see how that goes. But this is my thoughts here going into the beginning of the season. Let me know in the comments what you guys thought of the video. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe for more. And as always, guys, we will see you on the next one.